Hey, what's going on everyone? Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair with the Thursday evening, depending on where you are, weekly live stream where we talk about tech stuff. Tonight, a couple of the topics we have on the list. Huawei surpasses Apple as the world's second largest smartphone vendor, pushing Apple down to the number 3 spot. A phone company banned from the US will be making probably what is, at least as of today, the most impressive bezel-less phone you've seen. Blackberry phones now with no physical keyboards and running Oreo, as a matter of fact. Spectrum, the cable company, allegedly throttled Netflix and Riot Games in an extortion-like practice, identifying people by the way they swipe their screens. And no surprise here, but adults spend an average of about 6 hours per day watching video. And I guess we're adding to that one right now. All right, folks, let's talk tech. Wayne Taylor, how are you? I haven't seen you here for a while, and you mentioned a few things were going on with you, so I hope you're doing well, and there's a bit of a lag here, so I'll give you a second to respond to that. But yeah, I know it's AM for you, completely different part of the world, but for us, Thursday evening, and there's some interesting things going on here. I hope you guys are having a good week, and I hope that it stays quiet here. They're trimming trees out in the front yard right now. The service that was supposed to be here yesterday actually decided to show up like right before the stream starts, but I think I'm pretty well insulated for sound. We'll find out how that works out here in just a second. Let's take a look at this though. First of all, if you haven't already heard, let me just state this up front. Apple is rumored, may or may have not hit the $1 trillion mark when it comes to the stock cap. So it's kind of, they came out and they said that they did, and then they said that they didn't, and if they haven't, they're close. So they've been hovering there for a while. Would be the first company to hit the $1 trillion mark. And then, of course, it looks like Amazon will possibly be number 2. It could be Alphabet, hard to say at this time. But Apple would be setting a record. And as we know, they became the most valuable company in the world a couple of years back. So not really a shocker there, but that is kind of a milestone for them. Now, at the same time, it's kind of interesting to hear that Huawei, the company that we don't hear a whole lot about in the US at least, is actually now in the number 2 spot when it comes to the number of handsets sold, number 1 being Samsung still. I know it's a big shock if you're in the US, because what we tend to see is kind of our little part of the world here. But when we talk about the population of Earth, there are obviously a lot of people in Europe, a lot of people in Asia that go into this number. So when it comes to units sold, that right now is number 2 is going to be Huawei. Number 1 is Samsung. I'm going to stop here for a second because Wayne, 6 hours a day watching video. Hospital a few weeks ago for heart bypass surgery. Man, heart problems probably from watching 6 hours of video a day. Well, that probably doesn't help. But somebody told me is if you want to stay fit and you are addicted to watching to being on the internet, watching videos, stuff like that. Find a new show that you are addicted to from the beginning, and then get on a treadmill or a stationary bike and only allow yourself to watch that show while you're exercising. It makes sense in theory. I don't know if it's really going to happen, but I hope you're doing good, Wayne. I hope your health improves and we don't have to worry about any other heart problems, because that's pretty serious stuff. Of course, it's all porn, not good ticker. Okay, but good to see you back. So Huawei has we actually talked about this a couple weeks ago. They were getting close and they were hoping that they would beat Apple, and they actually did for the second quarter of 2018. According to new data from market research firms IDC, Canalys, and IHS Markit, Huawei outperformed Apple in terms of its units shipped for the second quarter in 2018. Now, of course, when we talk about dollar amounts, this is going to be completely different because of the price point associated with the handsets that people are buying. So again, keep in mind that what we're talking about here are the number of phones being sold, and Huawei finally overcame Apple, which was kind of one of their goals, which, something to brag about, I guess. You're selling more phones than Apple is. 15.7% of the global market share is what they currently have, and that compares to Apple's 12.1%. cited by IDC, whoever that is. So if you want to get the sources for this information I'm talking about, be sure to check down in the video description. I put links to everything that we discuss, at least anything that we're really spending time on in this stream, so you don't just think I'm making it up. And if there are any inconsistencies, you can blame the people that published the article. But I do want to make sure that we cite some reliable news sources, because there's some really crazy stuff out there. And when you find it published on one website, it's like, yeah, but when it goes mainstream like this, we assume this is accurate. Also, if you're down there in the comment section, feel free to leave a comment and hit the like button or dislike button, depending on how you feel, of course. Samsung led the pack with 71.5 million smartphone shipments to take 20.9% of the market, a contraction of 10.4% year over year. So Samsung, number one, sounded good at 20%, but actually 10% lower than the previous year. Obviously, Apple putting a little dent into their sales. Following Apple is Xiaomi and Oppo with the respective 31.9 million and 29.4 million. So those two pretty close to being tied for fourth place. And again, that is for the second quarter of 2018. And overall, they found the smartphone market contracted 1.8% year over year. Which is kind of a surprise, very interesting. But obviously, at a certain point, we reach saturation in different markets where people just say, okay, have a smartphone. You really have to show me something that's going to be exciting in order for me to upgrade or buy a new one this year. However, I just heard somebody make a reference to this today. If you look at a very low-end smartphone, something in the like $300 US range, it's going to be just 10 times what the very first iPhone was. And we're, obviously we're going back quite a ways for that. But every year we see this happen. Things come out at $1,000 or $700 or whatever. And a couple of years later, they're really not that exciting. In fact, the way the market moves, the way technology moves, it's like in 6 months, things start to get outdated. Yeah, so Wayne had commented on here, thought the government banned Huawei in the US, and for all practical purposes they have, and that was the one other thing that I wanted to mention shortly, because we talk about companies that are innovating and trying to compete with the big two, Apple and Samsung, and do things that are really going to excite people. And unfortunately, at least where I'm located in the US, the number of competitors tends to shrink more and more every year, and we're not seeing a whole lot of representation. And as you mentioned, yes, the government, the current administration has discouraged people from buying Huawei phones, period. And they're pretty much putting, it seems like, the impression I get is they're putting pressure on carriers saying, hey, we don't really want Huawei here. We want other brands, those other brands being Apple and obviously Samsung, and kind of squeezing them out of the marketplace, because if they don't have that retail representation, it's going to be difficult to sell the handset. Now, you can still go online. My understanding is you can buy the the P20 or the P20 Plus if you go onto Amazon, and I want to say that they have it on the Best Buy website. But the problem, of course, being is now that they're not focusing really on this market because they're kind of being edged out, a lot of times you sacrifice if you buy an imported phone, because the cellular bands can be slightly different from one region to another. So you might end up with the coolest state-of-the-art phone that there is, and it may not give you your 4G LTE connectivity depending on where you're located. So that's kind of the drawback there. And yeah, it's kind of lame that that we have to, I guess, pressure companies or pressure businesses and say, hey, we really don't want you selling this kind of stuff. Because as I understand it, and I tried to dig into this and figure out, what is so bad about Huawei? Why is it that we are worried about, foreign espionage and spyware and all this kind of stuff? And historically, the Chinese government was involved at a certain level with the Huawei Corporation. Now, currently, they're saying that it is employee-owned. However, when you talk to people who are familiar with the structure of Huawei, they say that it's very complicated the way the company's set up. So it's difficult to say, one way or the other, whether or not they're being influenced by the government. And that is the big concern, is that they're going to be building in some sort of backdoors, I guess, to spy on Americans. I don't know. It seems questionable, really, because when we look at the amount of products that are coming from China, and we look at the types of malware that are available wherever you're at in the world, it doesn't really matter, to kind of create this concern that if you buy a product from this particular company, I mean, wouldn't you be saying, I guess the Chinese government's interest in the company at one point in time is the real concern, because we have plenty of Chinese products all over. I mean, everything we get practically is coming from China in the first place. So they're wondering if there are still some ties to the government, and if, you know, China being a somewhat communist a dictatorship, I guess is the correct term, could they potentially be building things into phones and spying on people overseas? And what are they going to get with that information? I really don't know. But on the other hand, if you looked at it from a different angle and said maybe there are companies that do business with the US and are on terms where they would like to discourage any competition, today this would definitely be the company that you don't want to have to compete with, because if you're Apple or Samsung, you only have to worry about the other one, really. And if there's a third competitor that's kind of getting more and more popular and bringing technology to the table that you don't already have, those are the companies that you wouldn't want to see really in your market, which is what we're getting a lot of here. So I wonder, you know, I'm really curious as to the motivation behind keeping Huawei out of the US. I'm not sure we'll ever know the answer to that, but maybe in the future we'll see them here again. I don't know. Yeah, Apple factories are in China, exactly. And this is the thing. If they wanted to spy, wouldn't be too hard to throw a chip in a phone. Maybe, or maybe because Huawei, part owned by Chinese communists. Yeah, exactly. I think that may have something to do with that. Hey, Johnny, good to see you. But on that note, I did want to mention this, you know, at the same time, and I put that up front first because I didn't want to pull the rug out from anyone. This picture is everywhere, first of all. And I'm not sure why they say Trump. It says a company that Trump effectively banned. I don't know that Trump was directly involved in this. Maybe he was. Maybe it was his idea to ban Huawei. But either way, be that as it is, Huawei is working on a bezel-less phone. A new leak from earlier this week reveals that the upcoming Mate 20 Pro will be a jaw-dropping handset. When it's released later this year, the phone is rumored to feature a next-gen Kirin 980 processor, GPU turbo technology for enhanced graphics, 40-watt fast charging, a triple lens rear camera, and a new fingerprint sensor embedded right in the display. But more importantly, this. A truly, I mean, as close as you could possibly get, I would say, to a truly bezel-less design. So when all the companies out there brag about how they're bezel-less and there's there's nothing at the top, there's nothing at the bottom, there's just a little notch for the camera and so forth. You know, when I think of bezel-less, that's not really what comes to mind. This does. This thing right here that leaked. If this is legit, it is seriously like more, I'm going to say, what, 95 or more % of the screen is on the front of the phone, and that's it. And there's a tiny little line right across the top. If you look closely there, you can kind of see it. But this image is supposed to be the next, what did I just say, the P20 Pro? Oh, I'm sorry, the Mate 20 Pro. And it really looks like it's going to have nothing on the front but screen, with a very, very thin line at the top. As you can see, close to all screen, the Huawei Mate 20 Pro is expected to be released sometime around the middle of October in numerous markets around the world, except not here, I'm guessing. And I'm not sure if that extends into any other North American country, you know, Canada. I have no idea on this. Like, we don't have the details on exactly where this will be available, but, you know, lots of reasons to think that it won't be here, which is unfortunate, because look at it. I mean, if what you're after is a phone that doesn't have a notch at the top, it doesn't have a chin, it doesn't have a bezel. I mean, there's a tiny line there, but so far, I have yet to see anything that comes this close to being bezel-less. Fingerprint scanner under the display, so you don't have to worry about a home button if that's what you want to use to unlock your phone. This, I think, is something we're going to see everyone kind of working towards in the near future. And it looks like Huawei, you know, for better or worse, wants to be the first one to market with something this bezel-less. Will it really happen? I mean, if we believe these images, yes, it would be a surprise if they didn't, honestly, because, you know, we're so close to that already. And considering we're looking at a company that's at number 3 or at number 2, you know, shooting for number 1 next, I think it can happen. What do you guys think? I'm all in for hidden front cameras. Notch and bezels are pointless. And it's funny, we were just looking at a what was it? We were looking at an iPhone 10 the other day and trying to figure out why the notch. You know, why not just have a stripe across the top of the phone? I guess the real advantage is you can see your battery meter and your signal, and it doesn't interfere with what, your wallpaper. Like, because if you go and watch an app, if you're watching a video or something, the notch doesn't really offer any advantages that I can think of. But that's just me. That's just my personal impression of that. I would, sorry, let me back up here a second. Who is Use? I think I missed something here. Has anyone grabbed wind of the AMD EPYC processor clone that China just licensed through a bit of legal loophole? I certainly didn't. What makes me laugh about USA government is the whole Russian election meddling. Yeah, we could do an entire stream on that, Wayne, and it is entertaining at the least, I'll say, but I'm not going to get into that one here. I have to start another channel for politics, really, just to keep all that separate from this, talk about that, and then they can demonetize that channel all they want and, you know, take me out of the organic searches because I'm talking about politics. But it's so hard to ignore nowadays because it's everywhere. It's actually become the new drama pretty much on TV. Like Oppo X Find for the hidden front camera. Yeah, I like that idea. You know, putting the camera, and then also they're saying an ultrasonic, was it Huawei? Talking about an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner technology going behind the screen, which I don't even know what that means, like how that's going to work exactly. Just wondering if a screen like that would be any more prone to cracking of the screen due to almost no bezel to protect the edge of the screen. And this is the thing that I was kind of thinking for any phone, you know, including the Galaxy Edge. When you increase the screen area to go beyond what we would normally protect the phone if it falls sideways, right, is the bezel. Or even if it comes down at a bit of an angle, you know, something like this. You've got that edge to protect you, and it seems like what we're really driving towards here in the market is a phone that is all display that goes beyond that and actually wraps around the edges. And in my mind, if you don't have that in a case, it would seem that breaking that is going to be a real concern, number one. Secondly, when we start working with things like curved glass, we know that the failure rate is significant, you know, at least with the Galaxy Edge series. So when they make these things in the factory, there are a certain number of edge displays that just don't work. You know, they put all the money into manufacturing them, and then they go into, you know, the recycling or the trash heap or whatever because they can't be used. And obviously, if you're, let's say that you've got a failure rate of, 5%, and 1 out of 20 of these things can't be sold, you've got to absorb that manufacturing cost. So how do you do that? You do that by increasing the price of the screens that do work, which means that you and I pay more for the defect rate. So I know it sounds like a stretch, but anytime there's an additional cost incurred on a product that we're purchasing, we get to absorb that cost. You know, it's not like they're going to go, oh, we're just going to make less money this year and our stockholders are just going to be happy with that. No, we're going to end up paying for that in one way or another, the same way that we do when it comes to paying for features that we don't use. And that's the other concern I have. But what you're saying, though, Greg, is the first thing that comes to mind for me, people breaking more phone screens, you know, because you've got more real estate there that's actually screened. And when it starts wrapping around the edges, I mean, you got the back side of the phone, which is probably going to be made out of glass if we're going to have wireless charging, right? So all breakable all the time. Put it in a case, or come see me when you break it. Come see one of us when you break it, I guess. I can name over 20 countries around the world where USA has rigged, influenced elections. Think like with Chinese bit paranoia. Yeah, I'm not going to... I'm with you, Wayne. There's all this goes to so many levels that I couldn't even scratch the surface in an hour here. But yeah, there's crazy stuff going on. But the sad thing, the main thing is this: we can't get these phones here, you know, unless we want to import them somehow. And then the problem is, if you buy an overseas phone and you bring it to the U.S., what do you do in a warranty situation? You know, if you have a defective unit, it's going to be more challenging to get that thing fixed. It's going to be more difficult to get parts, and you know, they're putting us in a position where it's not going to be fun to do business with this company, which is really it's unfortunate. Let's see. Power button fingerprint scanners are cool. That's what I'm saying. Like the Sony Xperia and Razer phone, but rear logo fingerprint scanners are awesome too. Moto G6. Yeah, I'm with you on that. If I was going to use a fingerprint scanner on my phone, I would want it to be on the power button or the volume button or something like that. All right, where's my chat? I have no chat today for some reason. Let's see if we can fix that. There it goes. I guess it takes a minute to load up. That was bizarre. By the way, Huawei are leaders in 5G technology, so USA might miss out on 5G tech. When has that ever stopped us before, right? Yeah, I'm sure that's. I'm sure there will be some downsides to all these tariffs and trade wars and everything else, and trying to block Huawei from the US. I think a bezel-less screen is going to be more similar to the one on Moto Z2, which is more flexible but prone to scratches. Yeah, it's funny, Johnny. That's what we're all, I think, at this point in time, at least, the consensus is that when Samsung comes out with this, or is it Samsung? No, there's another company that was making a flexible phone. Somebody's trying to call me right now. Is that if we go to a plastic coating on the screen, what does that mean? Or it was an unbreakable. I'm sorry, it was the unbreakable phone that they're working on. If you go to a plastic screen, sure, it's less likely to shatter, but scratches are going to happen fast. That is going to be the downside. Wayne really got a, what? A lot of US phones don't work here due to frequency in Australia, I take it. Yeah, that would make sense. And also, I just heard this recently. My understanding is that Starbucks really did not do too well in Australia, and they're kind of limited to tourist areas, like major populated areas where people visit and come from out of the country. And outside of that, I get the impression that the locals aren't too excited about Starbucks, which I thought was interesting. So let's move on here. It is 20 after the hour, and we are going to take a look at another one that I'm not trying to tease you with. I just thought this was new. You know, this is worth talking about and seeing, and I'll tell you right up front, probably never going to happen in the US. Well, it might. It's possible, but unlikely. The Blackberry Evolve and Evolve X go official with massive batteries, basically in India for the most part. So, you know, if you're close, you might be able to get a hold of one. I don't think we'll be seeing them in the US. You know, we could. Who knows? But the Blackberry Evolve and Blackberry Evolve X are going to be coming with 4,000 milliamp hour batteries. Like the Blackberry Key 2, the Evolve X has a Snapdragon 660 chipset with octa-core CPU clocked at 2.2 gigahertz. The GPU is Adreno 512, while the RAM is 6 gigabytes. Storage on board is 64 gigs, but you can use a micro SD card for up to 256 gigs more, which is always nice, as long as you have a good, reliable micro SD card, because you don't want to lose data at that level. You know, on that scale, if you got the thing filled up. 5.99 IPS LCD. I guess they just couldn't go for 6. 5.99 inches of full HD plus resolution at 18:9. Horizontal dual camera setup. Now this is on the Evolve X. This is the upper tier of this model, and then they've got the plain Evolve, which is not quite as fancy. So on the Evolve X, a dual camera setup on the back, 12 megapixel and 13 megapixels with dual tone LED flash, another flash on the front, which makes sense for selfies and video calls. So you can actually have a flash on the front of your phone. Sounds clever. We'll see how that works out. The Evolve X battery is charged through USB-C, obviously compatible with Quick Charge 3.0 and USB power delivery. They're both running Android 8.1 out of the box, if I remember correctly. And then if you don't want to spend quite as much money, you can also get the Blackberry Evolve, which you're going to notice on both of these. First thing that I noticed, no keyboard, no physical keyboard on a Blackberry device. Very interesting. Now, we know they switched over to Android a while ago, but this is way different. I mean, this is the one thing that Blackberry has always been known for, that is having a physical QWERTY keyboard, and on this, it's all touchscreen, well, with the exception of the Blackberry Storm, which went over like a lead balloon. However, they did have something. Well, it wasn't really 3D touch, right? It was kind of like a click touch thing on the screen, and that didn't really go anywhere at the time. The Evolve misses on the wireless charging, so that's unfortunate. I'm a big fan. And the 6 gigs of RAM, and instead has a Snapdragon 450 chipset. Octa-core CPU is clocked at 1.8 gigahertz, and RAM is 4 gigs. The 64 internal storage can be expanded via the micro SD slot. So I don't know. I would imagine this will be popular in India, but it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing it here. So maybe Europe, who knows. The Evolve, the base model, also does not have quick charging, if I didn't mention that already, and they both come in black. So not too much to worry about as far as choices go there. Micro keyboard is just a vintage nowadays. Yeah, I think you're right, Johnny. There's probably a few diehard people out there who want to have that physical feel, you know, when you're clicking a keyboard. but for the most part, we're all touchscreen now. So I wish they'd bring back Android 4.4 install apps directly onto the micro SD card. Yes, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? I've had to add a capital R before the moniker to make it appear like a Lexus RX. Okay, I'm not sure what that is. Wayne says, never seen a Starbucks here. I won't pay more than $4 for coffee. Yeah, and I think that was the consensus of the conversation that I was listening to, was that overpriced, and the locals have their own preferences, not only for the type of coffee, but the way that it's made or something like that. But they allegedly invested a bunch of money in opening Starbucks locations all over Australia, and then my understanding was they ended up closing quite a few of them because it didn't catch on the way that it did in the US, where we can walk out of a Starbucks, look across the street, and see another Starbucks store, which is kind of bizarre. But let's see. So importing Huawei for you guys may be troublesome. Yeah, it sounds like it. It looks that way. So if you're not excited about the Blackberry Evolve X, I don't know. It's, you know, every phone pretty much looks the same now, right? I mean, it does have a front-facing camera and a sensor. You can definitely see a bezel at the top and the bottom, and the branding prominently displayed down there below the screen. But other than that, it looks like just about any other smartphone. Oh, it does, however, come with a special type of security, which I'm probably going to have to find here. And I want to say it's the same thing that they had on Blackberries in the past. And watch me not be able to find it now. Where'd you go? In any case, you know, that's the thing about Blackberries. They are known for their security. Yeah, I don't see it here, actually. It might have been another article that I was reading. Oh, yes, here we go. So it's Android Oreo 8.1 and comes with the company's in-house D-Tech security platform. Don't know too much about that. Believe it or not, most people drink instant coffee. That one I don't believe, Wayne. I think that you are attempting to mislead me, because instant coffee, come on. Are RAM memory less expensive than SoCs by today's standards? That is a good question, Johnny. Would have been a good question for our engineer, but I don't know off the top of my head. That's a good question. Did I say that 3 times already? Probably. No phones in the last year stand out that much to compel me. Just not a lot of innovation. I'd agree. I feel like we're innovating in areas that really aren't that important. You know, if there was one thing probably at the top of everyone's list, I'm just going to guess, would be a battery that lasts a long time. And this is one of the other things that traditionally BlackBerry has been known for. And as you saw at the beginning of the article, 4,000 milliamp hour battery. And I can remember having a BlackBerry Curve that I thought was turned off, but it was actually in standby mode. So the phone was actually still on. It would have received notifications had there been a SIM card inside. It was connected to Wi-Fi. It was still getting emails and stuff like that. And I had that thing in a cabinet, I want to say for a couple weeks, and went and found out, you know, picked it up, saw it was still on, and the battery was still charged, still had like 15% left on the battery. So maybe that's what they'll be doing in this one. It's really time, I think, for a new battery technology to emerge, right? I mean, we've been using lithium ion since like the mid to late 90s. And with all the problems that we've seen, I was actually having this conversation today, with all the problems that we've seen that involve lithium ion batteries not being able to ship things, you know, catching on fire, exploding, expanding over time, it seems like somebody would have come up with a better idea by now. You know, lithium is fairly unstable. If you throw it into water, it pretty much explodes. So when you're carrying this little, you know, potentially explosive device in your pocket, it's no wonder that airlines and, you know, couriers that ship electronics are a little concerned about that. And at the same time, could you imagine telling everyone who gets on an airplane that they can't have their phone or their laptop or their tablet or their rechargeable headphones or anything like that? Good luck. I think that would be a bigger deterrent than, what's that thing they have at the airport? I can't even remember the name now. The guys that check you in and put you through the scanner and give you mean looks and try to see if you'll flinch, I guess. I don't know. What do you call those guys? TSA. Yeah, I think taking people's phones away from them at the airport would be more discouraging than TSA when it comes to deciding whether or not you want to travel by air. Do we really need the thinnest and lightest phone rather than better battery life? I don't think so, but it seems like Apple and Samsung and a lot of these major manufacturers believe that's what we're looking for, is a very thin phone. Although you would think if the hardware is smaller, then it would be less of a drain on the battery, right? I mean, that seems like it would make sense. I'd rather buy a no-name Android phone from AliExpress than overpay for a popular Chinese phone. I'm with you on that. No, I'm serious. Instant coffee home and work. People buy fresh coffee on way to work, but most coffees sold here is instant. Really? That's strange. What kind of instant coffee tastes good? I'm just curious because the stuff that we have here, for most people who drink coffee, not the go-to at all. Some of the biggest lithium mines and refineries located here in West Australia. Interesting. We're actually going to start, or we've already started, I think, mining for cobalt in the US because most of the materials that go into making lithium-ion batteries come from the Congo, and there are a number of reasons why that needs to change. Nescafe. All right, I'll keep that in mind. That's it. Do you drink instant coffee? That might be the problem, Wayne. That could be the medical problem there. Instant coffee. All right, so on top of that, one of you, it might have been Greg, I'm not sure, one of you guys mentioned something about Charter being kicked out of New York. So we've seen that in the news. They got in trouble for not delivering on their promises to give people the internet speeds that they were supposed to. And now Spectrum, which is, I believe, owned by Charter, right? Let's see. Yeah, so Charter owns a company called Spectrum, and they allegedly had been throttling content specifically on Netflix and Riot Games, trying to basically extort money from these companies, according to this article. Okay, I don't want to say anything that would get me sued, but this is on TechSpot. It says the New York State Public Service Commission kicked Charter-owned cable provider Spectrum out of the state. We heard about this recently. The company allegedly failed to deliver on several promises related to its merger with Time Warner Cable. So in addition to that, it looks like before net neutrality came into effect back in 2015, they were doing some other shady stuff that's on here. Spectrum did this by deliberately limiting port capacities to content providers unless they paid for connections. In layman's terms, it was engaged in a form of extortion. So again, according to this article, before 2015, when we had net neutrality for that brief 3-year period until it went away again, companies could kind of get away with a lot of things that, you know, we would think are not really on the up and up. And what they're saying here is that between 2012 and 2014, Spectrum never informed customers as to why they were getting particularly low speeds on certain services, included in those Netflix and this other gaming platform, which is the one that hosts League of Legends. So if you wanted to play League of Legends back at that time when it was popular, or watch Netflix, you were not going to be able to do so at full speed on Spectrum's network. Now, they did apparently offer a payment plan for these companies to get faster connection speeds. Netflix said, no, we're not going to pay you for it. We will pay for the equipment that you need. And it gets a little complicated for me because I'm not an internet expert, but apparently there's a way that they can add equipment. I want to say somehow to allow the backbone that these companies deliver to bring their content faster, something to that effect. So Netflix said, hey, we'll cover the cost of making this happen and buy this equipment. And apparently Spectrum said, no, we don't want you to fund it. We want you to pay us money in order to allow people to get full speed on Netflix. So that being said, obviously they got in trouble for something completely different in New York and are kicked out of there, according to the article and all the major news outlets. But beyond that, this would definitely give me two things that we can conclude from this article. One is that the next time someone says, well, we were just fine without net neutrality, point them to this article, because before net neutrality, this type of stuff could happen, and there was no law that said that you can't do this. There was nothing on the books that said you can't go to a company and make them pay more in order for their content to be delivered to their customers at full speed. In 2015, that became a thing. No, you can't do that. You cannot extort a company and make them pay extra money so that their subscribers or their customers can access that content. Now that protection is gone. Now hopefully something will come in its place one of these days, but for the time being, what would stop them from saying, hey, we're going to do the whole thing all over again? You know, minus their reputation, and we don't really get the impression that most ISPs are concerned about a couple of things, and I know I'm generalizing here, but when it comes to customer service and public image, it doesn't really seem like that's at the top of their priority list. The squabble continued between 2012 and 2014, during which time Spectrum never informed. I already said that. Yeah, so they've got some data here to back up this information. Riot agreed to pay Spectrum in August 2015 in hopes of lowering latency. The company has 60 days to pack its bags. And this is in reference to them leaving New York. They have 60 days to pack its bags, which includes coming up with a plan to ensure an orderly transition to a successor provider or providers. If the switch does not go smoothly, the Commission will consider taking other actions, including bringing the matter in front of the Supreme Court. Now, back what I started to say here a minute ago was that Riot agreed to pay Spectrum and started tracking its data in 2013, provided proof that Spectrum's latency was well above 100 milliseconds, and it's got to be down to 60 milliseconds. This is too high for their gaming platform, apparently. And what happened was their latency was only lowered to 90. So they were supposed to go from 100 down to 60, but they only got it down to 90, which obviously defeats the whole purpose of these guys paying to get the speed that they're supposed to have. So this is unfortunate, but I suspect something that we'll probably see a lot more of in the near future until someone gets something on the books that really is going to force companies to treat people equally, you know, to treat all providers equally. FCC sides with Google Fiber over Comcast new competition. Okay, I'm going to have to read those articles. I appreciate you guys posting them. Most, including most purchased coffee in Australia, Woolworths, Nescafe. Okay, this is not an endorsement of Nescafe, but Wayne likes it. So, you know, if you can't trust him, I don't know if I've ever tried Nescafe, honestly. Charter was ready for net neutrality to fail. Yeah, they were. Do you think, Harvey, do you think they had anything to do with lobbying efforts to get net neutrality just gone, you know, right off the bat? I wonder. All right, so let's move over here because I thought you guys would find this interesting as well. I'm going to call the segment Mike's Conspiracy Theory 10 minutes. But really, it's just an article I came across that I thought was interesting. So the way that you swipe your phone can potentially be used to identify you, which is interesting for a lot of reasons. There are certainly some legitimate uses for this. There are some reasons why this would be a good thing. And at the same time, it is one more area where we are going to see less privacy and less anonymity and more of companies who have access to this information being able to see exactly what you're doing, where you do it, how often, where you spend your money, what websites you go to, you know, all sorts of other things, which ultimately will probably be sold to the highest bidder who wants to bring advertising to you or find out who you are and where you are. Now, it's a little different than just keeping track of packets that go in and out of an internet connection. Scientists have revealed the way you swipe, pinch, and tap your smartphone screen could be used to track your identity and potentially brief your privacy. Wow, that was weird. Yeah, so while regular tracking tracks virtual identities, such as online profiles, touch-based tracking has the potential to track and identify the actual physical person operating the device. You can see the difference here. If you had a number of devices connected to internet in one way or another, and you could say that here's the location of that device, or this person is logged into this specific account, this is their online persona. But if you're able to track the physical interaction between someone's fingers and the device that they're using, that means that there is a pattern that can be recognized no matter what device you're using. So if you walk across the street and use someone's tablet, or you fly across the country and you borrow someone's phone, there are specific patterns that they've identified in the usage, when everything from swiping up, swiping down, pinching and squeezing, how you scroll through things, that can fairly accurately determine who the person is operating that device. Now, obviously, this will be great if you're trying to track down criminals, right? Because no matter where they go, they can't be anonymous anymore if they're using a touchscreen phone. That's the great part of this technology. And of course, there's always the darker side, which means that there will be hackers and advertisers and people who really don't need to be into your business who will figure out how to use this to not only find out which devices are being operated, but by who, because once you can match up a single account to the habit, to this pattern, okay, so there's pattern of touchscreen interaction can be matched to your Facebook account or can be matched to your email account or whatever it is, something that has your real name on it. Then you build a profile of this person's pattern usage, and anytime they use a touchscreen, you go, oh, hey, there's Wayne Taylor. He's on this phone or this tablet or whatever it is. And you can, get some pretty detailed information about what people are doing, how often they're doing it, and who they're doing it with. So this will be an interesting thing. There's actually a study here, and I linked it in the video description. I'm not going to attempt to read through this for two reasons. One, you can see it's making a mess out of my screen, and I can't get this pop-up on the right to go away. I don't know how to make that smaller. But there's a very detailed, very long report as to how they came up with this information if you have the time. And I will say it gets into some mathematical expressions down here that it's going to go way over my head. But they explain how they came to these conclusions and how they developed this and the accuracy involved and so forth. And if I could just blow up like one of these images so that we can see it. They talked about the specific gestures that they use to identify. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to find it because this thing... It screwed up my whole screen, and I can't make it any different for some reason. I probably should have saved it offline, but if you're interested in that kind of stuff, fascinating, and this, of course, is the tip of the iceberg. Now, if you have a fingerprint scanner built into your device, obviously, you're already there. You don't need this to kind of figure out who's who, but they are saying, and this is the part that I don't get about this article, and I wasn't able to find it in the report, unfortunately. It's an Android purpose-built app. The team collected touch and gesture data, finding that writing samples can reveal 73.7% of information about a user. So we're talking about writing samples, right? Like handwriting samples will give 73.7% of information. I don't know what information that is that they're talking about. I suppose that's the accuracy percentage. And left swipes, just swiping the phone. Okay, so we're talking about writing and typing on the phone. Swiping on the phone gives you 68.6% information. No, we're talking about writing samples versus swiping samples. Okay, so look at this. A writing sample gives you 73.7%, whereas swiping, just swiping on its own, gives you 68.6% information about the person using the device. That's kind of weird, kind of crazy. I mean, it would solve a few problems. We wouldn't have to worry about Face ID. Stop doing that thing. We wouldn't have to worry about Face ID. We wouldn't have to worry about fingerprint scanners. All you do is swipe your phone, and now it recognizes your fingerprint. That'll be fun, right? So definitely some good uses behind that, I guess. Conspiracy theory, now your ISP will end the stream. I think you're right. It's probably going to start getting choppy. If it does, it's because I said bad things about, but I didn't mention any names, at least. Buy my backhaul wholesale. Now would be a good way to avoid net neutrality in USA. There you go. I've added Wisp to my business. Now 60 subscribers first week. Gave 140 speeds. Wisp. What is Wisp? Not familiar with that one. All right, so we have plenty of time today. Look at this. If you didn't already know this, and you probably did, adults now spend nearly 6 hours per day watching video. That might be an underestimate, or obviously it's an average, right? I was looking at this and thinking, wow, that is a fairly significant chunk of your life if you think about it. Really, we're saying that as far as we know, according to this survey, and keep in mind that surveys are obviously limited to people who have the motivation and the extra time on their hands to participate in surveys, right? So we're already addressing a very specific demographic when we talk about a survey. But according to that, US adult, you know what they should do? They should take this survey, the swiping technology, put those two things together, and then you can monitor and really see how much video people are watching on their phones per day. But they're saying on an average 6 hours per day, and this is for adults, okay? And everyone complains, no, it's not the kids. You can't put this on young people. This is adults watching 6 hours worth of video per day. This is a Nielsen rating, so again, keep that in mind. 11 hours per day Americans spend listening to, watching, reading, or otherwise interacting with media. So beyond the 6 hours worth of video, whether you're talking about television, YouTube, whatever it is you happen to be watching, some sort of programming, there's another 5 hours spent interacting with, in one way, shape, or form, media of some sort. And this is like almost 50% of your life the average person is spending either probably using a smartphone, listening to a radio, TV going on in the background, playing with a tablet, computer, something along those lines. And you start to think about it, depending on what your occupation is, there are probably a lot of people who spend even more than that amount of time. Obviously, there'll be some health concerns, I think, behind that one. And they've got some charts here, but if you spend, let's say you spend 8 hours a day sleeping, you've got 16 hours left, and 11 of those hours are spent interacting with some sort of media. That is a lot of screen time, people. That is crazy. Like when you see the numbers, I mean, we know that people are addicted to their phones, they're constantly checking them, they're always, a lot of us work on the computer, so we need to have the computer in front of us. But put that into perspective. If you spend 11 out of your 16 waking hours somehow being connected to some screen or some keyboard or something like that, or a TV, or, at the very least, music, which is probably the least invasive, that's a lot of time spent interacting with whatever it is that you happen to be working with. Live and time-shifted TV in particular eats up the most time, with adults watching an average of 4 hours and 46 minutes per day on this type of media. So I'm assuming they're talking about DVR, live, on demand, things that are recorded that you can play, which at least there you have the advantage of not watching commercials, so you can cut down a little bit on that, right? Thanks to video use of the internet, we got broadband nowadays. That's a good point. That is true. Kids that got hooked on internet are adults now. Good point. I wonder how many are 18 to 24, and I believe it says somewhere in this article specifically what ages they are, but if you're an adult, we assume that you're above the age of 18, possibly the age of 21. However, the research does indicate some growth in streaming TV, I think. Time spent on these devices is up by 5 minutes per day to reach 40 minutes total. Since when? Is this from last year? I believe this is, compared to 2017. Time spent on devices like game consoles, Roku. Oh, game consoles are a big part of this also. Let's not forget the billions of hours spent playing Fortnite. Time spent on these devices up by 5 minutes per day to reach 40 minutes total, with 26 of those minutes devoted to internet-connected devices and 14 to game consoles. Younger people, not surprisingly, are embracing digital platforms and internet-connected devices much more quickly than older demographics. Another shocker. Not really news, but still, to see these numbers, this is significant. Adults are spending an average of 45 minutes per day on social media, with the majority of that time on smartphones. So there's another one. Almost an hour per day, adults spending on social media. That's a lot of time, If you think about what you're doing with your life, I'm not knocking it, but I will say that now that we have apps that can track how much time we actually spend on our phone and what we're spending that time on, I don't think anything's going to change for the most part. You remember when Apple made that big announcement about how they were going to show you on an iOS how much time you're spending on your phone? How many people looked at that and said, "Oh, geez, I got to get off the phone now"? I'm guessing it's a very small number. I guess anything is better than nothing, but I don't suspect this is going to change anything behaviorally speaking. We've known this for a long time. We know it's a trend that's continuing. We have this conversation all the time. Look at how people are looking at their phones and not talking to each other. But the technology, barring some natural disaster or maybe World War III knocking us back into the Stone Age, this technology is not going away. So the behaviors are unlikely to change. There's nothing compelling I don't think at this point that's going to make people think I got to stop watching so many videos. I got to stop using my phone, right? I mean, I can't think of anything. Maybe one of these days. Don't forget to hit the like button. Yes, thank you, Wayne. Thank you, everyone, for hitting the like button. I appreciate it. I always forget to ask, and when I do, you guys hit the like button, and that's awesome. I just got to remind myself to remember. That's why I put the little spinning box down here, but I know it just becomes like a thing that you tune out after a while. 9 watching and only 4 likes. It's terrible. You know, one thing, Harvey, I do know is that there are people who watch that aren't actually logged in, and of course on YouTube, if you're not logged in, you can't hit the like button. So what are you going to do? And the odd thing is, a lot of times I'll see 7 or 8 people in the chat and it tells me 2 are watching. So I'm not sure how accurate those numbers are, and then vice versa. It's a weird thing. Nate's Tech Services is late, but he's here. Hey, you must be busy making money. Nothing wrong with that, right? Thanks to... Okay, I think we already covered that. 3 minutes of watching porn and I'm done. That was Wayne, folks, not me. I'm a good 5.5 to 6 minutes. No, I'm kidding. 3 minutes of porn, I'm done. That is funny. Imagine watching 1080p video over a 56K modem. I can remember getting a 28.8 modem, I think, and being so excited at how much faster my computer was. Yes, I am that old. Speaking of the Stone Age, I blame Netflix for their binge streaming. I gotta agree with you, Harvey. Netflix is actually... I love Netflix, but they've gone a little far with making silly series. You know, making everything into a series, but at the same time, you don't have to watch it, right? There was something that I watched. Oh, I think I already mentioned to you guys last week or last stream, Wild Wild Country. Check that out if you want to be fascinated about cults and how they bring people in, and if you want to call it brainwashing or loyalty building or whatever it is. Fascinating series on Netflix. I have 5 accounts logged in. Oh, awesome, Wayne. So it's all you watching, right? Hey, I had a troll on here a couple weeks ago, and he must have hit dislike on every account that he logged in on. I've never seen that before, but it's funny because we banned him, and then he got mad and hit dislike, which, you know, if he'd done like 100 dislikes, that would have been bad, but he did 5, which is good because it all counts as interaction. So thank you. Appreciate that. I appreciate the likes more than the dislikes, but, you know, anything counts. Likes, comments, shares. I think that's it, friends. I've got 9 minutes to spare. I wish I had something else to show you. Let's see. What do I have that's new? Did I get some new equipment in? Probably nothing to speak of at the moment. I will say this, though, guys. Have you noticed, all of you who are techs, have you noticed a ridiculous number of iPad Airs just, like, kicking the bucket? Like, just quitting for no apparent reason. And you check everything. You replace the charge port. You replace the battery. You replace the TriStar. Nothing works. They just die. And everyone seems to conclude, you know, from the information that I've researched, that the power management I see on those things just eventually gives out, and those things are $85 cost just to get the part. That's not to mention installing it, removing the old one, installing the new one, the liabilities involved, and so forth. And I know it's an old device. It's just strange to me that there suddenly seems to be an epidemic of iPad Airs that are just dying out of the blue, and now we're starting to see some iPad 2s where it appears as if the NAND has become corrupted again for no apparent reason. Now it could be that people are restoring and they are, you know, updating and they lose their connection or something like that. But I've been seeing a crazy number of iPad Airs just doesn't work, doesn't charge, doesn't respond, just all of a sudden stopped. It's a weird thing. Hey Mike, I was inspired. I want to make more repair videos and talk conspiracies. Let the comments dictate what we talk about. Hey, I'm with you, Nate. And in fact, you had mentioned you had a new video coming up pretty soon. So I don't know if you do, because my notification thing works when it wants to. So if you've got a new video, let us know, man. I want to see them. I really enjoyed the Wi-Fi replacement that you did. Yeah, I agree. I love the conspiracy talks. I just want to be careful what I say on here because YouTube's so strange about what they permit and don't anymore. Let's see. Going to rename? What do you think? What do I think? I think it's awesome if that's what you're asking. They're going to rename that model into iPad Smoke. Yeah, that's a good one. They should name it into iPad Self-Destruct. The date code expired. Time to get another one. That's what I'm feeling. Orange people were here for years. Still remember Sheila on local TV. Oh, so Wayne, you guys had some sannyasins in your area? This thing fascinates me. Like, I was around during that time, but I do not, of course, I wasn't watching the news. I was pretty young, but I do not remember any of this stuff. And when I watched the series, I was like, wow, this is like just a couple states north from where I'm at. Sheila on local TV saying tough titties. I saw, that's actually in the documentary. They must have tens or hundreds of hours of actual footage of this commune and all the activities that were going on, the newsreels and this stuff. It's really amazing. Rajneesh had large compound here, and where Bhagwan and followers stayed in West Oz. That is nuts. I had no idea. Like, this guy had people, I think they said that at one point they had something like 300,000 followers, like, worldwide. Dude ended up with a Learjet and I don't know how many Rolls Royces. I think they ended up saying he had like 70 Rolls Royces or something ridiculous. I'm just wondering, like, you know, obviously they had some form of income because they were generating money. A lot of people were donating their own wealth, but they had set up ways to earn profit and made a lot of money. Just nuts. I haven't filmed it yet. I'm moving to my shop again. To a bigger unit tomorrow. Then I will start filming. So are you moving out of the existing business that you were in? Because I think you were co-located with someone, right? That was selling stuff in a mall, if I remember correctly. I love watching Ancient Aliens. Hey, we should do an Ancient Aliens thing. That's kind of a tech-related topic, right? There was a cult in Harvey's college trying to recruit members. They wore white bed sheets. That is so crazy. The Orange Clockwork. I just can't believe that I never saw this. Like, I remember the Hare Krishna stuff that they were kind of making fun of, and I actually probably saw it in the Airplane movie. Like, the first time I was like, what is this? And they had the Hare Krishnas. But I had never heard of the Rajneeshis or Sannyasin or anything like that. And this was just huge. Like, they took over that town. It was nuts. Yes, Wild Wild Country mentions Oz, their commune down south. Huge following here until the police closed them down. Okay, so they did close it down. Because my understanding is they still have, or do they? No, maybe I'm thinking of another one. I'm probably getting my wires crossed here because there was another. After that, I got into this kick of watching these cults, and they had another one in Hollywood. It's called Holy Hell. That was a weird one. They had this guy who looks like he's made out of plastic, and he basically recruited all these people to follow him in Hollywood. And then they had this other church. It was called the Children of God or something like that, which is just all involved in really bizarre, a lot of them pretty sick stuff. And there's so many of them, like you don't even know where to start. But Wild Wild Country, I think, is probably the best one I've seen so far. I actually met the Bhagwan and Sheila when I arrested Sheila back in the 80s. Are you serious, Wayne? You arrested Sheila? That, man, did you happen to take pictures? I would love to see that. My girlfriend will be blown away when I tell her that because we were both like into this series. It's really worth watching if you're interested in cult stuff like that. They're supposedly, if I remember correctly, they're making a movie out of the Waco situation with some big actor playing David Koresh and that whole thing, how that went down. I am excited to see that one also. So yeah, so Nate was located inside a computer repair shop. That's right. Not enough space for the both of this computer repair shop's not big enough for the two of us. Is that what you had to tell him, or did he? No, it's crazy, isn't it? How you think you have enough room, and then you add more equipment, and then you have more people coming in. You got to store stuff. You need to get a safe. Yeah, it goes crazy. Well, that's congratulations, man. Moving to a new spot. When you get those pictures, send them over, man, and we'll put them in the stream for sure. The Children of God is the one who belonged to the family of Joaquin Phoenix, right? Yeah, they had a few, I want to say a few big Hollywood names involved in that. And in fact, with the Rajneeshis, they had this lady called Hasya, who is the wife of, if I remember correctly, the wife of the producer from the Godfather movie. So his wife ended up joining this cult. I don't want to give everything away for you, so you guys will have to see it. It's very interesting. Nate lived a short distance from the Ruby Ridge Siege. Ruby Ridge Siege. That rings a bell. What is that? I'm going to have to look that up because I don't remember. I'm curious now. Let's see. What is the Ruby Ridge Siege? I love being able to do this. It's so much easier than having to prepare this stuff ahead of time. So the Ruby Ridge Siege. Oh, in Naples, Idaho. What? This is another one. Do they have a documentary? I'm going to have to watch this. There was a cult in Idaho. I know somebody who's going to be very interested in this. Resulted in deaths of Deputy U.S. Marshal and civilians, juvenile. Wow, interesting. Okay, I'm going to check this out. Site of an 11-day siege. Let's see. Weaver, members of an immediate family and family friend resisted agents of the U.S. Marshals and the hostage team. Why? Following a Marshals Service reconnoiter of the Weaver property pursuant to a bench warrant for Weaver after his failure to appear on firearms charges. So what did he do besides having firearms? Being called... Any cult who demand money from their followers is just a scam. You know, Johnny, that pretty much that's pretty much every religious organization last time I checked, or most of them, if you think about it. Cults give free food and shelter, though. Oh, there you go. Ruby Ridge was sad. Okay, I'm gonna have to read this. I'm not familiar with this one, but this is cool stuff, guys. All right, I don't want to keep you all night. This is a lot of fun. I want to try to stick on tech topics, but maybe we should start doing a stream occasionally that is a little more off topic, because there's so much interesting stuff out there to talk about, and you guys are all fun to talk about it with. So I'm going to research this Ruby Ridge thing. I had not heard about this, and there's actually someone here at my house that may know about it right now, because they are also from Idaho. So I'm going to look into that. He was seen at neo-Nazi compound nearby and cut down some shotguns for them. Ah, okay, so... it was especially sad when ATF shot his wife. Jeez. He didn't do anything, but the guns and the court docs sound like the feds set him up. Well, that's the thing. And obviously with the whole Waco thing, that was mishandled terribly. You know, they had children inside of the compound when they pretty much set it on fire. And, yeah, it got ugly. But sadness. Let's not end on that note. Let's talk about, it's Thursday, so we're almost to the weekend. I'll be back Monday at 2 p.m. as usual. If not, hopefully I'll see you here 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time next Thursday. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of the week and enjoy your weekend. I'm going to get out of here. I have to be somewhere pretty soon. But as usual, it's been lots of fun, and I will talk to you next time.